The year was 2027, and though only 3 years had passed since humanity's first contact with alien civilizations, the world had changed in ways both wondrous and terrifying. The skies above Brookhaven, once silent and serene, were occasionally streaked with glimmers of extraterrestrial spacecraft. The townspeople, despite initial curiosity, wore faces etched with anxiety. Friendships that had once been simple were now overshadowed by concerns about the unknown, about the visitors from distant stars, and about a future that seemed both thrilling and menacing. Ethan Carter's life, prior to that fateful day, had been peaceful, if uneventful. At 34, he lived in a modest, single-story home near the edge of Brookhaven's rolling farmland. He enjoyed the quiet hush of dawn, the chirping of crickets at dusk, and the slower pace of a small town too far from major cities to fret about corporate expansions or busy highways. He had few vices. He drank tea more often than coffee, read old books in the dusty library on weekends, and collected vinyl records of classical music for rainy afternoon escapes. In truth, he was nobody special, just another face in a crowd. Yet, the government saw something in him, something so vital that they sent him the letter that would forever alter his existence. The letter arrived in a sleek white envelope, adorned with the emblem of the Global Interplanetary Council. When Ethan held it in his hands, he felt his heart pound as though it knew, in some wordless way, that his destiny had been cornered, and there was no turning back. He tore the envelope carefully, as if expecting the pages to burst into flames. The typed words, formal and concise, spelled out an unthinkable directive. Dear Mr. Ethan Carter, your profile has been selected as part of Project Unity, an interspecies integration initiative aimed at fostering peace and understanding between humankind and our newly allied extraterrestrial civilizations. You have been assigned 3 prospective brides from the following alien collectives: the Reiner Collective, the Volker Dominion, and the Etherian Confederation. Please be prepared for their arrival within the next few weeks. Accommodation, orientation, and resource management guidelines will follow in a subsequent notice. Noncompliance is strictly prohibited under Executive Mandate 142B. Your cooperation is appreciated. Welcome to the new future. The words fell on Ethan like a hammer blow. 3 alien wives? Under no circumstances would such an arrangement have even crossed his mind a few years ago. But now, this directive was reality. He read the letter 3 times in a haze. Project Unity was not just a rumor. It was real, and he was to become one of its most prominent participants. Some claimed the government's new policies were designed to ensure interplanetary peace. Others whispered darker motives, something about forging genetic links and alliances too complex to be spelled out in any official dossier. Regardless, Ethan couldn't avoid it, for noncompliance is strictly prohibited had been clearly stated. And so, with the unstoppable tide of fate washing into his living room, Ethan waited in a kind of resigned dread. He was told that the 3 brides would arrive on a designated date, accompanied by escorts and officials. In the days leading up to that moment, he found his mind wandering. He wondered if these alien wives would look human at all, or if they would tower over him like walking behemoths of cosmic origin. Would they speak in cryptic tongues, or would they have already studied Earth languages? All these questions swirled in his thoughts, even as the rest of Brookhaven continued its daily hum of normalcy. At last, the fateful day arrived. Ethan, wearing his best collared shirt, stood on the porch of his small home, half trembling and half trying to appear welcoming. He caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the glass window, disheveled hair, eyes faintly bloodshot from sleepless nights, and the dull pallor of anxiety across his cheeks. Then, he heard the low hum of a sleek, official hover vehicle, unlike any typical Earth car. As it glided silently down his driveway, it stirred a sense of deep foreboding within him. Stepping out in a measured, meticulous manner, 2 uniformed government agents approached. One was tall and slim, the other short and brusque, both wearing black suits with a subtle silver insignia on the lapel. They gave Ethan a curt nod before opening the vehicle's door. From within emerged 3 figures, 3 silhouettes that would soon become central to his life. Lyra of the Reiner Collective, taller than Ethan by a head, she had a graceful, almost statuesque form. Her skin possessed a faint, shimmering lavender sheen under the midday sun. slender fingers, elongated eyes, and the studied poise of a scientist who weighed every detail. A thin circlet gleamed around her forehead, containing technology that Ethan could only guess at. She spoke in measured tones, her voice carrying the resonance of someone who valued logic above all else. Sienna of the Vulcar Dominion. She was robust in stature, with an athletic physique that spoke of discipline and martial training. Her hair, a bright cerulean hue braided in a warrior's style, framed her intense, amber eyes. She wore a form-fitting uniform of some thick, dark material that hinted at readiness for combat. Even standing still, Sienna exuded a latent energy, like a coiled spring waiting to leap into action. Mira of the Etherean Confederation, smaller, daintier, and possessing a soft glow to her silvery hair, Mira had a warm expression that seemed to reach out and cradle Ethan's apprehension. Her lilac eyes sparkled kindly, and she inclined her head in a delicate bow, as though already sensing the emotional flurry within him. Among her kind, empathy was said to be a cherished skill, and her civilization valued deep connection and emotional harmony. The three brides, so different in appearance and demeanor, stepped onto Ethan's porch, each offering a greeting or gesture to acknowledge him. Gone was the possibility of refusal. Despite his racing heart, Ethan swallowed hard, extended his hand, and managed a shaky hello. Lyra studied his face with sharp interest. "Ethan Carter, I presume," she said quietly, her accent almost unearthly, though her English was near perfect. "I have examined the preliminary data regarding your environment and personal habits. I look forward to establishing a functional household." Sienna snorted gently, crossing her arms over her chest in a stance that, on her world, might have been a greeting of respect, or possibly the stance of a warrior at rest. "The Vulcar Dominion recommended this union," she stated. "I hope you can keep pace with me. We Vulcar value strength of mind, spirit, and body." Then Mira stepped forward, shy but smiling, with soft hands clasped together. "It is my pleasure to meet you, Ethan," she said, voice hushed yet melodic. "I can sense your trepidation, but please know that we shall do our utmost to harmonize with your lifestyle. The Etherean path is that of balance." Though Ethan was speechless, he nodded, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The government agents handed him a folder of documents. They murmured a few instructions, something about monthly check-ins and resource stipends, then retreated swiftly to their vehicle. In minutes, the hover engine rose, the craft vanished down the road, and Ethan found himself standing in stunned silence with three alien wives he had neither asked for nor believed he'd ever have. He ushered them inside, offering them seats in his modest living room. The interior was a reflection of Ethan, cozy but old-fashioned, with faded floral patterns on the couches, shelves of books stacked in corners, and an archaic turntable perched on a small table. For a moment, the four of them remained in a mutual silence, broken only by the soft hum of the air-conditioning unit in the window. Lyra's gaze drifted around the living space, taking in every detail. Her interest was intense, the way a scientist might examine an alien habitat. Sienna tapped her foot, eyes darting to the windows, perhaps checking for vulnerabilities or escape routes. Mira folded her hands on her lap, exuding a gentle warmth, as though radiating calm into the tense air. "What now?" Ethan finally asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Now," Lyra replied, "we attempt to learn how best to cohabitate. I have taken preliminary lessons on human domestic patterns. However, it will require direct observations to refine our methodology." Sienna laughed, albeit in a slightly mocking way. "Let's see if your house can handle three alien brides." "Where's the training area?" she asked, scanning the space as if there must be a hidden gym or sparring arena. Ethan blushed. "I don't have anything like that. Maybe I can set something up in the garage." Mira placed a soothing hand on Ethan's wrist. "We will adapt," she assured him softly. "Do not worry. This project's purpose is cooperation, not hardship. We will help one another." In that moment, Ethan realized he was trembling. The kindly warmth of Mira's presence, Sienna's fierce energy, and Lyra's rational composure pressed in on him from all sides. There was no guidebook for living with three alien wives. Over the coming days, Brookhaven watched with timid fascination as the strangest family in town took shape. Ethan did his best to make his new spouses comfortable. He rearranged the house so that each could have a private space. The guest room was given to Lyra because she requested a quiet location for her research. Sienna set up camp in the basement, where Ethan cleared out old boxes so she could have enough space to do her daily Volker drills. He left the master bedroom to Mira and himself, though the arrangement felt awkward at first, as if he were hosting an old friend rather than sharing a bed with an alien bride. That initial week was a whirlwind. Government-provided guidelines arrived in the mail, describing recommended meal plans based on nutritional needs from each alien race. Lyra herself took charge of these suggestions, scanning them into her handheld device, analyzing nutrient ratios, and formulating daily cooking schedules. She prepared Volker high-protein rations for Sienna, simpler Earth-based meals for Ethan, and a blend of herbal infusions for Mira's Etherean constitution. The kitchen, once a quiet place for the occasional sandwich or homemade stew, now bustled with the clang of unfamiliar utensils and the hiss of new cooking contraptions that Lyra had brought from her starship. Early each morning, Sienna rose with the sun to do her exercises in the backyard. She moved through forms that resembled a martial dance, fluid yet powerful. Some neighbors peered from behind curtains, wide-eyed at the extraterrestrial woman performing astonishingly agile flips and spins in the dewy grass. Sometimes, Sienna would let loose a battle cry that ricocheted across the sleepy suburb, prompting whispered gossip among the townsfolk. More than once, Ethan had to reassure worried neighbors that Sienna posed no threat, at least no more than a dedicated athlete practicing their sport. As for Mira, she wandered through the house, gazing at photographs of Ethan's parents and grandparents. She listened attentively when Ethan explained the significance of each memory. She was fascinated by human emotions, the subtle shifts in voice and posture that betrayed deeper feelings. Each evening, while Ethan sat in the living room with a book in hand, Mira might reach out, ever so gently, to sense the emotional undercurrent in him. She would tilt her head, eyes glowing with that soft lilac hue, and he would feel calmer, as if enveloped in a soothing aura. He began to realize that Mira's presence was not just decorative. Her empathic abilities could ease tensions, blend disparate moods, and bring about a harmony he had never experienced before. Of them all, Lyra was the busiest, for the Reiner Collective had tasked her with documenting every aspect of her new life. She carried a sleek digital pad, snapping photos of the furniture, the yard, the food, and the expressions on Ethan's face when he encountered new scenarios. Her curiosity seemed boundless. She asked about Earth's atmospheric composition, local agriculture, human biology, emotional courtship rituals, and everything in between. Sometimes her questions were so direct that Ethan flushed with embarrassment, but she never apologized. She merely nodded, satisfied to collect the data. He suspected that Lyra's logbook would become a vital piece of information for her entire civilization, an insight into how humans lived and loved. Soon, though, cracks began to form in the fragile peace. Brookhaven was small, and while some neighbors were courteous, others shunned them. Ethan's oldest friend, Roger, visited once, but the awkwardness of conversation, punctuated by the silent scrutiny of 3 alien gazes, unnerved him. He left quickly, making a flimsy excuse about needing to pick up groceries. The next day, rumors spread in hushed tones at the local diner. Whispers of that Carter boy with his alien wives circulated, reaching Ethan's ears through the local grapevine. The tension in Brookhaven simmered, quietly at first, until it threatened to boil over. On a few occasions, strangers passed by Ethan's house and shouted slurs. The government's mandated integration had left some feeling resentful, cheated, and fearful. They worried about alien infiltration, about losing their cultural identity, about the possibility that the entire thing was an elaborate Trojan horse scheme orchestrated by alien powers. Ethan tried to keep his household calm, but the hostility outside weighed heavily on all of them. To ease the strain, Ethan and his brides tried to engage in community events, hoping to bridge the gap. They decided to attend a local meet and greet that the mayor had arranged to facilitate better understanding between humans and alien delegates. It was held in the town hall, a simple building with squeaky wooden floors and a modest stage. Upon arrival, Ethan felt a wave of stares. Some looked on with curiosity, others with suspicion. The mayor, a plump man with a genial smile, welcomed them. He gave a short speech about Brookhaven's role as a pioneering force in human-alien relations, adding that the success of families like Ethan's would shape the future for everyone on Earth. During the mingling session, Lyra found herself cornered by local scientists, who bombarded her with questions about Reiner technology and possible agricultural benefits. She fielded each query with measured composure, explaining new farming techniques that might enrich Earth's soil. Sienna attracted a group of teenage athletes, fascinated by her strength and combat moves. She demonstrated a Vulcar exercise routine right there in the hall, to the gasps and applause of onlookers. Mira wandered softly among the crowd, smiling and gently placing her hands on people's shoulders, as if trying to ease the tension that knotted their hearts. At first, it seemed that the meeting was going well. People laughed, shared stories, and even praised the variety of new foods that the aliens introduced. But as the evening wore on, a quiet undercurrent of resentment began to surface. The local fisherman, a gruff man named Brody, stepped up to the stage and voiced his concerns about alien ships disrupting aquatic life. A small group from a nearby town insisted that Earth's resources might be plundered. An older woman, her gaze harsh, demanded that these alien wives prove their loyalty to humankind. The mood soured. Ethan watched, heart racing, as argument flared between those who supported peaceful coexistence and those who felt threatened by alien presence. All it took was a careless remark or two for the tension to snap. A short scuffle broke out near the refreshment table, one of the locals lunging at another for sympathizing with invaders. Town officials stepped in, struggling to contain the shouting matches. In the midst of it, Ethan could see Mira's eyes brimming with sorrow. She could sense the emotional waves of fear, anger, and hostility. Lyra's stoic mask faltered momentarily, revealing a flicker of dismay. Her data collection had not prepared her for such raw hatred. Sienna clenched her fists, torn between wanting to defend her honor and abiding by the Vulcar code, which demanded control in uncertain social situations. The mayor, hands shaking, adjourned the meeting early, urging everyone to leave peacefully. Outside, under the moon's pale glow, Ethan tried to console the three of them. "Not everyone is like this," he said shakily. "We can't lose hope. This is new for all of us. They're just scared." Sienna glowered at the horizon. "Then let them face their fear," she spat. "In my homeland, fear is not an excuse for disrespect." Lyra exhaled softly, as though recalculating probabilities. "We may need a more systematic approach to quell these anxieties," she mused. "Perhaps a demonstration of mutual benefit would yield better results." Mira nodded, placing a gentle hand against Sienna's shoulder. "Do not let anger cloud your heart," she whispered. "Our purpose here is unity." Ethan drove them home, the headlights cutting through the darkness of rural roads. The air was thick with unresolved tension, but as they stepped inside the house, Ethan noticed a small hamper by the door, a gift from one of his neighbors. It contained fresh fruits and a handwritten note. "Thank you for trying. Some of us do believe in a better tomorrow." A tiny gesture, yet the sight of it made Ethan's chest constrict with relief and gratitude. Perhaps not all was lost. As the weeks turned into months, life settled into a tenuous routine. Each bride fell into habits reflective of her background. Lyra, with her studious nature, filled the house with notes and scientific instruments. She often retreated into a small corner of the living room to analyze data, sometimes forgetting to sleep. Her interactions with Ethan were cordial, even warm at times, but always tinged with intellectual curiosity. She once asked him, very matter-of-factly, if there was a mathematical pattern to human love. When Ethan struggled to answer, she merely nodded, making a note on her device as though his confusion was data in itself. Sienna dedicated herself to physical training, taking up a section of the backyard where she erected tall wooden posts to practice her Vulcar combat sequences. She also took daily runs through the farmland roads, leaving behind startled cows and wide-eyed farmers. Despite her tough exterior, Sienna was beginning to show a surprising camaraderie with Ethan. Once, when a group of teenagers jeered at her from across the street, Ethan rushed to intervene. But before he could say anything, Sienna simply placed a hand on his arm, shook her head, and continued calmly on her path. Later, she said, You were brave to stand up for me, Ethan, her voice betraying a sliver of warmth. Mira spent much time studying Earth customs, especially emotional expression. She accompanied Ethan to the local library, poring over psychology texts and classic literature. Dickens, the Bronte sisters, Edgar Allan Poe, and others. She absorbed the emotional undertones of each story, seemingly enchanted by humanity's capacity for both tragedy and triumph. At home, she practiced a kind of Ethereal meditation, which involved softly chanting melodic notes that resonated through the house. The effect was subtle but left everyone feeling calmer, as though their daily worries had been gently massaged away. Despite this settling in, tensions outside continued to mount. Small gatherings of protesters sometimes appeared near the edge of Ethan's property, holding signs demanding that the aliens go back to where they came from. Rumors of an anti-integration group, calling themselves Earth for Earthlings, circulated in hushed tones across Brookhaven. Ethan tried to keep his wives unaware of these details, but they sensed it nonetheless, each in their own way. One brisk afternoon, while Ethan was in town picking up supplies, a group of angry neighbors confronted him near the grocery store parking lot. Their leader, a burly man with a scar on his cheek, pressed a pamphlet into Ethan's hand that outlined the supposed dangers of interspecies relations. Their arguments ranged from talk of alien infiltration to fear of genetic contamination. "This is madness, Carter," the man growled. "We know you didn't choose this, but it's not too late to undo the damage. Get them out of Brookhaven. Our ancestors fought to keep Earth safe from invaders, and we'll do the same." Ethan tried to respond diplomatically, heart pounding in his chest. "They're not invaders, they're official envoys. And more than that, they're my family now." An ugly sneer crossed the man's face. "Family? You can't even call those things your wives. They're cosmic monstrosities. For all we know, they're going to lay eggs in your living room and bring about the end of humanity." "They're not insects," Ethan said, bristling with indignation. "They're people, in every sense of the word. And if you can't see that," one of the man's associates scoffed, "you're delusional. This so-called unity project is just the government selling us out to aliens. You watch yourself, Carter. When this all blows up, you'll be on the wrong side." They left him standing there, shaken and furious, pamphlet in hand. On the front, large block letters spelled out, "Stop the Interspecies Breeding Program." Beneath it was a crude caricature of an alien wedding. Ethan crumpled it into his pocket and headed home, the groceries suddenly feeling very heavy in his arms. Back at the house, Ethan found his wives gathered around the kitchen table in hushed conversation. Mira greeted him with concerned eyes. Lyra glanced at his tense posture. Sienna narrowed her gaze, instantly sensing trouble. "You're upset," Lyra observed, standing up. "Your vital signs indicate heightened stress. Did something happen in town?" Ethan let out a slow breath, unloading the groceries onto the counter. "Some people they don't understand. They're afraid." He paused, glanced at them, then pulled the crumpled pamphlet from his jacket pocket, placing it on the table. "They passed this to me." Sienna picked it up, her eyes scanning the hateful rhetoric. A low growl escaped her throat. "Cowards," she muttered. "Where I come from, such an insult would be met with immediate challenge." Ethan shook his head. "I don't want violence. I just want them to see the truth." Mira placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Fear is a potent poison. It clouds the mind and twists good hearts into bitter shapes. Let us remain patient and let our actions speak for us." Lyra traced a long, slender finger across the pamphlet. "Perhaps a direct demonstration of goodwill could shift their perspective. We could host a community event here, at our home, to show them that we pose no threat, that we are sincerely invested in mutual prosperity." Sienna arched a skeptical brow. "I doubt an invitation to tea will melt hearts of stone." "It might not," Ethan conceded, "but we have to try something." He straightened his shoulders, injecting a note of determination into his voice. "Our union is part of a greater plan to ensure peace among different races, human and alien alike. But peace isn't just signed into law. It's earned through understanding." They all looked at one another, each realizing that their fate was intertwined. Perhaps, in forging a genuine bond among themselves, they could project it outward to the community. With a newfound resolve, they began planning a small gathering. Ethan was no party planner, but Mira offered to handle ambience. filling the home with soft lights and soothing ethereal music. Lyra would display some of her Reiner breakthroughs, soil enhancers, water purifiers, that could benefit local farmers. Sienna agreed to give a demonstration of Volker martial discipline in a friendly, instructive manner rather than a show of force. And so, over the next week, they prepared. Ethan printed invitations, distributing them to neighbors and local shops. Lyra finalized her data to present, carefully balancing between revealing helpful knowledge and preserving certain Reiner secrets. Sienna honed a martial routine that was more artistic than combative, weaving in a narrative about Volker heritage. Mira practiced a melodic chant that would open the event, designed to set hearts at ease. Despite their efforts, only a handful of people RSVP'd. Others remained silent, or returned the invitations with scrawled refusals. Nevertheless, the day of the gathering arrived, bright and sunny, with a gentle breeze wafting across the backyard. They set up chairs under a makeshift canopy, laid out tables of refreshments, and tuned the old stereo to lightly play classical earth music. By noon, a small cluster of townspeople arrived. Some were curious, others supportive, and a few seemed uncertain but unwilling to condemn without investigation. Mira started with her chant, a soft, lilting series of notes that seemed to resonate gently in the listeners' chests. As she moved from note to note, one could almost feel tension lifting from the air. Lyra gave a concise, fascinating talk on how Reiner technology might help Earth conserve resources, offering them for free trials to local farmers who wanted to volunteer. Sienna performed an elegant sequence of spins and kicks, describing Volker philosophy along the way, emphasizing the importance of strength used for protection rather than domination. People asked questions, some polite, some probing. Ethan stood by, ready to jump in if hostility arose. But as time passed, he felt a small but genuine warmth. A local farmer, Harold, took some of Lyra's soil enhancer samples, muttering that he'd give it a shot. A teacher from Brookhaven's elementary school praised Mira's enchanting melodies, asking if she might perform for the children. A few young athletes admired Sienna's demonstration, itching to learn some of her moves. The event was winding down, a cautious success, when a sudden noise broke the fragile calm. From the street, a group of demonstrators marched onto Ethan's property, brandishing signs and shouting slogans. At their head was the same burly man who had accosted Ethan by the grocery store. "This is a sham," he roared. "You're turning our people into lab rats for alien experiments." His supporters echoed the cry. Several of the guests stiffened in alarm, while others quickly scattered, not wanting a confrontation. Sienna stepped forward, fist clenched. "You dare disrupt a peaceful gathering?" she barked. The man sneered, jabbing a finger at her. "Oh, you want to fight, freak? Bring it on." Ethan hurried between them, arms outstretched. "Stop. There's no need." He was cut off by a rough shove, knocking him to the ground. In a blink, Sienna's reflexes took over. She lunged, twisting the man's arm behind his back, but not enough to break it. A flash of fear crossed his face as the crowd gasped. Another protester tried to come to his aid, but Sienna swiftly sidestepped and blocked the blow. Mira rushed in, voice shaking with emotion. "Stop. Please, no violence," she pleaded, her empathy flaring as she tried to diffuse the aggression. Lyra stood to the side, eyes wide, as if calculating how this might escalate. More protesters arrived, yelling hateful slurs, fueling the tension. Ethan scrambled up, placing himself between Sienna and the mob. "This is my home," he shouted, voice cracking with urgency. "Stop this." The burly man, red-faced and struggling against Sienna's lock, spat on the ground. "Your home's a disgrace, Carter." Finally, Sienna released him, a snarl curling her lips. The man stumbled back, but before he could renew his attack, Mira placed a trembling hand on his chest. He froze momentarily, confusion flickering in his eyes. The chant that Mira began was soft, nearly inaudible, but resonant with an otherworldly gentleness. The man's furious expression faltered, turning instead into perplexed wonder. For a fraction of a second, everyone felt it, a wave of calm that swept through the yard. Some in the mob blinked, uncertain why the anger in their chests felt suddenly dulled. But then, a car horn blared from the road, snapping them out of the moment. The protester shoved Mira aside roughly, though not as violently as he might have a moment earlier. I'm warning you, he yelled, backing away, seething. This isn't over. With that, he and his companions retreated, leaving the gathered guests shaken and speechless. As the dust settled, some of the onlookers approached Ethan timidly, murmuring apologies that the event had been disrupted. Others slipped away, frightened by the possibility of continued trouble. Eventually, only Ethan and his wives remained, the backyard littered with overturned chairs, half-eaten refreshments, and the remnants of good intentions. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, feeling overwhelmed, sorrowful, and exhausted. We tried, Mira whispered, her eyes downcast. But their fear is deep. Sienna spat angrily on the ground. They attacked us in our own home. Next time, I won't be so merciful. She stormed inside, fists clenched, muttering vulgar curses under her breath. Lyra exhaled, pressing a hand to her forehead. This has ramifications beyond our personal household. The success of Project Unity depends on local acceptance. We must rethink our strategy. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, inhaling slowly. Outside, the setting sun painted the sky with burnt orange. We'll figure it out, he said quietly. Somehow. We have to. Giving up isn't an option. The clash at the gathering spread rumors across Brookhaven, polarizing opinions further. Some defended Ethan and his wives, arguing that the protesters had overstepped. Others labeled Ethan a traitor to humanity, stoking fires of resentment. Tension teetered on the brink of open confrontation. Yet, despite the turmoil, something unexpected was happening behind the closed doors of Ethan's home. The four of them were growing closer. Strife from the outside world had forged a bond within. They began sharing stories late into the night, sometimes sipping tea, a beverage Mira grew particularly fond of, while confiding fears and hopes. One evening, as they sat around the living room, the glow of a single lamp illuminating their tired faces, Sienna asked, almost awkwardly, Ethan, do you regret this union? Ethan glanced at her, surprised. I never asked for it, he said, but regret? I can't say that. Somehow, it feels right, in spite of everything. He looked at each of them. Lyra, studious and thorough. Sienna, fierce but protective. Mira, gentle and empathic. It's strange, but I feel complete, in a way I never have before. Sienna's stoic visage softened, her eyes reflecting something akin to relief. Lyra nodded thoughtfully. Your acceptance baffles me, she admitted, yet I find it admirable. Reiner logic might dictate that such a union is too high risk, emotionally, socially. But the data suggests that under your care, we have formed an unexpectedly profound bond. This outcome is significant. Mira offered a small smile. Connections are rarely about logic alone. They are about hearts intertwining. I cherish the harmony we are creating, even as we face resistance. It was during one of these late-night talks that Lyra suddenly rose from her seat, excitement lighting up her features. I recall a communication from the council, she said. They mentioned plans for a Unity Festival in the capital next month, a major celebration of human-alien cooperation. We were invited to attend, if we wished. It might be the perfect place to show the broader success of our family. Myra's eyes brightened. Yes, I heard of it too. Delegates from multiple alien races and humans from all around the globe will be there. Music, art, scientific displays, an exchange of cultures at a grand scale. Sienna drummed her fingers on her knee. You think presenting ourselves on a bigger stage might help quell local hostility? Lyra nodded. Or at least overshadow it. If the entire world sees the positive results of interspecies marriage, Brookhaven's hostility might dwindle, overshadowed by global support and interest. We could galvanize a wave of acceptance that sweeps back home. Ethan considered it, heart pounding with a fragile kind of hope. It's worth trying, he said. Let's go to the festival. Let's show everyone what we've built together. Arrangements were made swiftly. The government agents, upon hearing of Ethan's interest in attending the Unity Festival, expedited travel passes and supplied a sleek transport vehicle capable of intercity flight. The day they departed, a handful of neighbors watched with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation as the four of them boarded the silent craft. A few well-wishers waved, while a couple glowered at them from behind picket signs. As the vehicles soared above farmland and rolling hills, Ethan gazed out the window, marveling at the shimmering horizon. Just a few years ago, Such advanced technology would have been unimaginable. Now, here he was, married to 3 aliens, heading to a festival designed to unite multiple worlds. The capital city, once just a sprawling metropolis of glass towers and busy streets, had been transformed for the festival. Bridges and tall buildings were adorned with banners displaying interplanetary symbols. Outdoor pavilions showcased alien architecture, and the air hummed with languages from across the galaxy. Humans walked alongside extraterrestrials of all shapes and sizes, some humanoid, others more exotic. Ethan spotted a cluster of tall, luminescent beings conversing quietly with Earth scientists, while a pair of gliding amphibious aliens took photos of Earth's modern skyline. Upon landing, they were greeted by a representative of the Global Interplanetary Council, a trim man named Armand, who extended a warm welcome. "Mr. Carter, ladies," he said with a courteous bow, "we are honored by your presence. The Council is most interested in your experiences as an interspecies family. We've prepared a modest lodging for you during your stay." They were led to a secure hotel near the main festival grounds, overlooking a vibrant plaza where celebrations were in full swing. The atmosphere was electrifying, brimming with hope and excitement that starkly contrasted the tension back in Brookhaven. Ethan felt his spirits lift, just seeing so many diverse races coexisting with ease, laughing, sharing food, discussing art and technology. He dared to imagine that such unity could become the norm everywhere, someday. Over the following days, Ethan and his wives became minor celebrities. They were invited to panel discussions about the challenges and rewards of human-alien marriages. Journalists flocked to them for interviews. Some asked polite, thoughtful questions, while others probed salaciously about intimacy and private matters. Lyra handled the scientific inquiries with aplomb, Sienna showed off her Vulcar martial prowess in special demonstrations, and Mira impressed the crowds with her empathic skill, soothing disputes between delegates of different species. Ethan, initially shy, found himself passionately describing their life in Brookhaven, both the joys and the hardships. He spoke honestly about the hostility they faced, the fear among neighbors, and the attempts to bridge the gap. As the festival continued, a groundswell of admiration for the Carter family emerged. After all, they represented exactly what the festival championed: genuine unity, forged through courage and love. One afternoon, while Ethan was catching his breath between interviews, a tall, imposing figure approached. She wore flowing robes reminiscent of an ancient Earth queen, but her dark blue skin and luminous eyes marked her as a member of the Etherian High Council. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice resonating with regal serenity, "I am High Counselor Naleth of Etheria. I've heard much of Mira's success and your family's dedication." Ethan stood, bowing his head respectfully. "It's an honor, Counselor." She smiled, and a gentle light seemed to radiate from her. "I come bearing a message of gratitude for what you and Mira have accomplished." Her empathic gifts, when combined with human resilience, could pioneer a powerful new bond between our species. "We support your endeavor wholeheartedly." Ethan felt tears prick at his eyes. "I'm just doing what I believe is right," he said simply. "The simplest truths are often the most profound," she replied, inclining her head. "May the universe bless your union." Likewise, Sienna was approached by a Vulcar battle commander, a scarred veteran who gripped her forearm in the Vulcar sign of respect. "Your restraint in the face of provocation does us proud," he told her, eyes gleaming with approval. "True strength lies in knowing when not to strike." She nodded solemnly, absorbing the praise with humility. He then turned to Ethan, giving him a measured look. "You have the loyalty of a Vulcar warrior," he said. "That is a bond not easily broken." Meanwhile, Lyra received messages from the Reiner Collective praising her meticulous research on Earth society. They requested she continue her documentation, hinting that the data she collected would shape future diplomatic endeavors. Lyra relayed the news to Ethan with a smile, uncharacteristically emotional. "They respect our family," she said quietly. "That is no small achievement." The festival was not only a gathering of dignitaries and families like Ethan's, it also featured cultural showcases. One evening, as bright lanterns illuminated the night sky, Mira sang alongside an ensemble of Etherian and human musicians. The audience was mesmerized, tears in many eyes, as her melody transcended language barriers. In that moment, no one was human or alien. They were merely souls bound by the wonder of music. Sienna took part in a friendly exhibition match against a human martial arts champion. The crowd roared with excitement as their graceful forms clashed, a testament to the shared discipline and respect found in combat sports across the galaxy. They ended the match with a handshake, grinning at each other in mutual admiration. Lyra presented a keynote talk on advanced resource management. She demonstrated new techniques that combined Earth's ecological knowledge with Reiner technology. Governments worldwide expressed keen interest, seeing the possibility of saving Earth's strained environment. The festival concluded with a grand ceremony in the main plaza, under a canopy of shimmering lights and digital fireworks. Delegates from each alien race offered parting words of friendship and solidarity. As Ethan and his wife stood on stage, hands entwined, they received a standing ovation from thousands of festival-goers. The roar of applause was deafening, and for a moment, Ethan felt weightless, like they had, together, accomplished something truly meaningful. Returning home after the euphoria of the Unity Festival was bittersweet. The shining towers and welcoming crowds of the capital were replaced by Brookhaven's quiet streets and tense glances. While they were gone, the anti-integration group had grown bolder, painting graffiti on walls and distributing incendiary leaflets. Yet there were also signs of change. A few neighbors, who had watched their triumphant appearances at the festival via news broadcasts, approached them with hesitant smiles, offering muffled congratulations. Some farmers who had tried Lyra's soil enhancers were seeing increased crop yields, grateful despite lingering reservations. One night, an unexpected visitor knocked on Ethan's door. Dressed in a worn leather jacket, he introduced himself nervously as Tom, a local mechanic. In his hands, he clutched a battered radio. I saw your presentation, he stammered, unable to meet Ethan's eyes directly. My sister has an illness that Earth doctors can't treat. I heard that some alien technologies might help. Ethan invited him in. Lyra quickly scanned Tom's information and compiled a list of possible treatments available through the Reiner Collective. Mira sat beside him, gently calming his fears. Sienna looked on with quiet respect. By the time Tom left, he was near tears, thanking them repeatedly. That simple act of kindness, intangible yet profound, spread through the community. Little by little, people saw the alien wives not as threats, but as beings willing to help. However, peace is rarely won so easily. One evening, while Ethan and his wives were preparing dinner, a sudden whoosh of acrid smoke wafted through the window. They rushed outside to see their old pickup truck engulfed in flames. Ethan's heart lurched. Someone had doused the vehicle in gasoline and set it ablaze. The flickering inferno lit the darkness with a cruel glare. A scrawled message on the fence read, "No more aliens." Neighbors rushed out of their homes, some to help, others to watch in shocked disbelief. Sienna tried to dash toward the truck, but Ethan grabbed her arm. "It's too dangerous. Let it burn," he said, voice shaking. Mira clasped her hands to her mouth, tears streaming as she felt the hatred behind the act. Lyra stood rigid, a mixture of horror and anger twisting across her features. The fire department arrived swiftly, dousing the flames, but the truck was beyond salvage. In the glow of the charred remains, Ethan's resolve hardened. He stepped forward, scanning the faces of the onlookers until his gaze fell upon a small knot of familiar troublemakers. They stood at a distance, smirking. They did not admit guilt, but their mocking sneers conveyed enough. Ethan lifted his chin, voice ringing out over the crackling embers. "This won't drive us away," he declared. "You can burn my truck, but you won't burn our family." A hush fell across the crowd. Some turned away, uneasy. Others nodded in silent support. Eventually, everyone trickled back into their homes. Only Ethan, his wives, and a smoldering husk of a vehicle remained in the night silence. After the arson, the government offered additional security, but Ethan declined the presence of uniformed guards. He didn't want to perpetuate the divide or create a fortress around his home. Instead, Sienna took it upon herself to patrol the property, sleeping in short shifts and keeping vigilant watch. Lyra installed some discreet Reiner sensors around the yard to monitor disturbances. Mira meditated frequently, trying to maintain a peaceful emotional climate. Ethan contacted local authorities, who promised to investigate, but results were slow in coming. Despite the setbacks, something remarkable was blossoming within the family. The bond between Ethan and his 3 wives grew stronger. Their initial politeness and cautious cooperation had matured into genuine affection. He began to notice the unique way each of them showed care. Lyra, in her meticulous manner, often programmed small notes of encouragement into Ethan's phone, timed to appear throughout the day. She'd greet him in the morning with a gentle nod, sometimes brushing her hand against his shoulder in a tender motion that was, for her, a great display of warmth. Sienna's fierce protectiveness extended beyond physical safety. She nagged Ethan to exercise, pushing him to jog with her, determined to improve his stamina. Though she presented it as training, Ethan recognized it as concern for his well-being. Mira shared the deepest emotional moments, often placing her hands on his temples to calm his anxieties. In the quiet of night, they spoke of the future, of hopes for a peaceful life, and she would rest her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his human heart. Their household felt like a small fortress of unity against a storm of ignorance. Even the day-to-day tasks, cooking, cleaning, or repairing broken appliances, became testimonies to their growing closeness. And in that unity, Ethan found the courage to confront Brookhaven's mounting hostility. Days passed without another major incident, lulling them into a cautious routine. Then, one chilly autumn evening, the storm broke. A group of masked individuals, carrying makeshift weapons, trespassed onto Ethan's property. They scattered menacing flyers around the yard, stating, "Humanity first," and the alien threat. Alerted by the sensors, Ethan, Sienna, and Lyra rushed outside. Mira lingered behind, summoning her empathic abilities should they need emotional intervention. Confronting the intruders, Ethan called out, voice echoing in the darkness, "Leave now, or we'll call the authorities." A harsh laugh emerged from their leader, his face hidden behind a scarf. "The authorities are in the aliens' pockets," he barked. "It's time we took matters into our own hands. Humanity has to fight back." Sienna squared her shoulders. "You are on private property, threatening violence. Withdraw at once." Her tone carried the command of a Vulcar warrior, and for a moment, the group hesitated. But another masked figure, brandishing a baton, lunged forward. Sienna deftly sidestepped, disarming him in a single smooth motion. Lyra, though less combat-savvy, held up a small Reiner device that released a piercing sonic deterrent. Several of the intruders staggered, clutching their ears. Chaos descended upon the yard as more of them rushed in. Ethan found himself shoved against the house, grappling to keep from being struck. His heart thundered in his chest, fear mixing with adrenaline. Everything blurred. He saw Sienna exchanging blows with 2 masked attackers, her powerful kicks knocking them back. Lyra tried to keep others at bay with her device, carefully aiming its sonic pulses so as not to harm innocents. One intruder threw a blunt object, narrowly missing Ethan's head. Suddenly, Mira emerged from the doorway, eyes glowing with fierce empathy. She raised her hands, and a palpable wave of disorientation rippled through the attackers. One by one, they stumbled, as if confronting a torrent of confused emotions. To Ethan's amazement, her empathic powers seemed to scramble their aggression, turning it inward. Some began to weep uncontrollably, others stared at their hands in horror. The masked leader, however, resisted. He turned on Mira, raising a crude pistol. Before Ethan could shout a warning, a deafening crack split the air. The man fired. For an instant, time froze. Ethan watched in horror as the bullet whizzed toward Mira. She flinched, a cry escaping her lips. But Sienna, moving faster than thought, hurled herself between Mira and the bullet. The projectile struck Sienna in the shoulder. She staggered, eyes wide with pain. A roar of rage ripped from her throat as she fell to one knee. Blood blossomed across her uniform. Lyra let out a cry of alarm, rushing to Sienna's side, rummaging frantically for a medical kit. Ethan's mind went blank. Fear and fury surged through him as he darted toward the gunman. Perhaps seeing the blood, or sensing the tide turning, the attacker stumbled back, eyes wide, then fled with his cohorts, leaving the yard littered with flyers and battered weapons. Ethan dropped to his knees beside Sienna, heart pounding in his throat. Mira knelt opposite him, tears streaming. Lyra pressed gauze against the wound, scanning it with a Reiner med tool. "The bullet didn't pass through," she said, voice shaking. "We need advanced treatment." Holding Sienna's hand, Ethan cursed under his breath. "Stay with us," he pleaded. Sienna's face contorted in pain, but she managed a weak nod, her grip on Ethan's hand unyielding. Mira closed her eyes, channeling every empathic skill she possessed in an attempt to soothe Sienna's distress. "We must get her to the medical center," Lyra urged, activating a distress beacon on her device. Sirens wailed in the distance. The night's darkness pressed in, but there was no time to dwell on fear. Sienna's well-being overshadowed everything else. Ethan's heart threatened to burst as he watched the woman who had become his fierce protector slip in and out of consciousness. An ambulance, accompanied by government security, arrived swiftly. Sienna was rushed to Brookhaven's medical facility. The staff, already briefed on alien physiology through Project Unity resources, worked fervently to stabilize her. Blood transfusions, combined with specialized Volker healing aids, waged war against the bullet's damage. Ethan, Mira, and Lyra waited outside the operating room, each lost in worry. Hours crawled by. Finally, a weary doctor emerged, stripping off his gloves. "She's stable," he said, relief evident in his eyes. "We managed to extract the bullet, and her vitals are improving. Volker physiology is surprisingly robust. She should recover fully with rest." Ethan sank against the wall, tears of gratitude escaping. Mira and Lyra embraced him, their own expressions awash with relief. For a moment, there were no differences between them, just three souls united in love and fear for a fourth. When they were allowed to see Sienna, she lay pale but conscious. Tubes and monitors surrounded her bed, beeping softly. She turned her head slowly, forcing a wry smile. "Takes more than a puny earth bullet to kill a Volker," she mumbled, voice still laced with pain. Ethan bent down, taking her hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved Myra's life." Mira stepped forward, tears shimmering. "Sienna, words cannot express the gratitude I feel." Sienna exhaled. "We're family," she murmured, eyes closing again. Mira bowed her head, resting a hand on Sienna's arm, channeling waves of comforting warmth. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, official inquiries, and rising public outcry. The attack on Ethan's property was front-page news, igniting debate across social media and national broadcasts. Some decried the violence, demanding immediate crackdowns on anti-integration groups. Others used the incident to stoke further fear, claiming it was proof that humans and aliens could never coexist peacefully. In Brookhaven, however, something surprising happened. People who had once stood on the sidelines now stepped forward in condemnation of the assault. The brutality of the attack, the sight of Sienna's blood on the ground, shocked the community's conscience. Food and flowers were delivered to Ethan's home as tokens of support. A small vigil was held outside the medical facility where Sienna recuperated, with townsfolk lighting candles and leaving messages of hope. As the dust settled, local law enforcement, backed by federal agents, tracked down several of the assailants. The leader, however, remained at large, fueling speculation that a more extensive underground network of anti-integration extremists existed. But the wave of sympathy pouring in for Ethan and his wives swelled, drowning out much of the hateful rhetoric. People who had wavered on the fence realized that blind hatred had nearly killed someone in their very own neighborhood. Sienna's recovery was steady. Within a week, she was able to sit up and banter with the nurses, though she still winced when moving her injured shoulder. Ethan helped feed her, all the while enduring her playful insults about human food lacking spice. Lyra diligently monitored her progress, adjusting medications as needed. Myra's empathic healing sessions soothed Sienna's pain, speeding recovery. Bit by bit, the stoic Volker warrior regained her strength. When she was finally discharged, Brookhaven's sheriff escorted them home, ensuring no further ambush would occur. They found their property cleaned up, the graffiti scrubbed away by volunteers, and supportive notes pinned to the front door. It was a far cry from the hostility they had faced only weeks before. As time passed, the extremist group's presence in the town dwindled. Those who remained in opposition retreated to the shadows, wary of provoking more outrage. A calm, tentative but real, settled over Brookhaven. The local paper even ran a positive feature on Ethan's family, calling them symbols of unity and resilience. Yet, the greatest surprise of all came a few months later. Mira began to feel unusual sensations, pangs in her stomach, and a shift in her empathic energies. Concerned, Lyra ran a series of biological scans. One afternoon, she summoned Ethan, Sienna, and Mira to the living room, her face alight with something close to astonishment. "I have rechecked the data multiple times," Lyra said, her voice trembling, "and the result remains consistent. Mira is pregnant." Silence enveloped the room. Myra's lilac eyes went wide with a flood of emotion, a hand drifting instinctively to her abdomen. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat, a kaleidoscope of joy, shock, and wonder. Sienna, leaning against the couch, exhaled a low whistle. "You mean a child?" she said, struggling to comprehend. "Half human, half Etherean?" Mira looked at Ethan, tears brimming, a luminous smile dawning on her lips. "A child," she whispered, voice trembling with awe. She reached for Ethan's hand, pressing it against her belly. An indescribable warmth flowed between them, as if a tiny spark of life pulsed in the air. Ethan's legs felt weak, and he sank onto the couch, eyes shining. "A baby. Our baby." The words tasted surreal, as though he had uttered them in a dream. Joy reverberated in the room, a swelling tide of love that threatened to overflow. Lyra cleared her throat softly, her usually composed demeanor giving way to excitement. "This is unprecedented. There has never been a confirmed case of human-alien hybrid pregnancy. The scientific implications, it's beyond anything we've documented." Sienna approached Mira, gently placing her uninjured hand on the empath's shoulder. "Are you all right?" she asked haltingly, unaccustomed to such tender conversations. Mira nodded, tears of happiness rolling down her cheeks. "I feel complete," she whispered. "I sense a life within me, a life that embodies both our worlds." Ethan wrapped his arms around Mira, pulling her close, then extended a hand to Sienna, who joined the embrace. Lyra stepped in too, folding them all into a four-way hug that captured the magnitude of this moment. Even though each came from different backgrounds, human, Vulcar, Reiner, Etherean, here they were, forging a future literally growing inside Mira. Over the following weeks, news of the pregnancy spread like wildfire. Government officials, ecstatic at this development, rushed to offer specialized medical support. Scientists clamored to study Mira's condition, though Lyra protected her fiercely, ensuring no intrusive experiments would be allowed. The media labeled the unborn child as a symbol of unity, a beacon of hope, and even a miracle of the new age. Brookhaven's reaction was mixed but mostly supportive. Seeing a pregnant mother, carrying new life, softened many hearts that had once been hardened by fear. Neighbors brought gifts, blankets, baby clothes, stuffed animals. The local pastor offered blessings, though he openly admitted he didn't quite know how to bless an alien human child. Young couples, human and otherwise, found courage to dream of their own cross-species families. Amid the daily hustle of prenatal care, checkups, and government consultations, Ethan's house bristled with a gentle hum of anticipation. Months turned into a peaceful lull as Mira's pregnancy advanced. She developed some unusual cravings, like earth strawberries dipped in an Etherean spice syrup that smelled of lavender. Lyra meticulously tracked her vitals, occasionally conferring with Etherean healers via holocommunications. Sienna fussed over security, determined that no harm would befall Mira or the unborn child. Ethan found himself reading parenting books at night, simultaneously excited and terrified. As Mira's belly grew round, she radiated an almost ethereal glow. Passers-by who once eyed her with suspicion now smiled, as if seeing her pregnancy humanized the entire notion of interspecies marriage. Every so often, a small crowd would gather outside Ethan's house, offering well wishes. Meanwhile, the more extremist factions seemed to dwindle, overshadowed by the wave of positivity that surrounded the expectant family. One crisp morning, near the edge of winter, Mira went into labor. The pains came quickly, and there was an urgency in her eyes that sparked alarm in Ethan. Lyra activated the hover van, and they rushed to the nearest specialized clinic, escorted by local law enforcement who cleared the roads. The staff had prepared a special wing for this unprecedented birth, combining Earth obstetrics with advanced Etherian medical techniques. Mira's labor was intense, far more so than the doctors anticipated. At times, her empathic abilities flared, sending waves of her contractions' agony outward, inadvertently causing the medical staff to stagger with sympathetic pains. Lyra provided sedation where possible, while Sienna paced the corridors, rattling the walls with anxious footsteps. Ethan never left Mira's side, holding her hand, whispering encouragement. His tears flowed freely when he saw the lines of pain etched across her face. After hours that felt like centuries, a high, clear cry pierced the air. The baby, tiny, pink, and perfect, entered the world, with a faint shimmer to his skin and a tuft of silvery hair. His eyes, opening slowly, revealed an iridescent swirl of color, a breathtaking blend of Ethan's brown and Mira's lilac. Overcome by emotion, Ethan laughed and sobbed at once, pressing kisses to Mira's sweaty brow. Sienna and Lyra, summoned into the delivery room at last, stood in stunned wonder. The nurse, tears in her own eyes, laid the baby gently in Mira's arms. "Aiden," Mira whispered, cradling the infant. "We shall name him Aiden." Ethan stroked the baby's cheek, his chest tight with awe. "Aiden Carter," he confirmed. Lyra murmured with scientific fascination, "I can scarcely fathom a hybrid child." Sienna, still somewhat speechless, just smiled, eyes shining as she gently brushed a finger across Aiden's delicate hand. In the days that followed, the hospital was inundated with messages from around the globe and beyond. Delegates from the Vulcar Dominion, the Reiner Collective, the Etherian Confederation, and countless Earth nations extended congratulations. Gifts poured in, some exotic, like crystal sculptures from the moons of Reiner, others humble yet heartfelt, like homemade quilts from Brookhaven residents. For those who still doubted, the sight of a healthy, cooing baby bridging two worlds seemed to ignite a spark of possibility. With Aiden's birth, the final piece of Ethan Carter's once simple life had fallen into place, creating a family both extraordinary and profoundly normal. Days blurred with midnight feedings, diaper changes, lullabies, and visits from enthralled neighbors. The quiet house in Brookhaven bustled with the sounds of an infant's cries and giggles, accompanied by the cooing comfort of 3 alien mothers and 1 devoted father. Occasional tensions still bubbled in the wider community, but a definitive shift had taken root. People recognized that a line had been crossed. Love had prevailed where fear once reigned. Aiden was living proof that humanity and alien civilizations could merge in something new, something hopeful. He became a beacon, not just for Brookhaven, but for the entire world, showing that unity is not defined by laws or limitations, but by choices and compassion. Sienna fully recovered from her injury, wearing the scar on her shoulder as a badge of honor, reminding them all of the cost of standing for what was right. Lyra continued her research, focusing now on the physiological marvel that was Aiden, but always mindful to protect his privacy. Mira blossomed in motherhood, her empathic gifts allowing her to sense every nuance of her child's needs. And Ethan, once a simple man in a quiet town, found himself at the forefront of a new era, balanced between fatherhood, love, and the responsibility of showing the world that barriers between species could be transcended. One golden afternoon, they gathered on the porch, Ethan seated, holding baby Aiden, while Mira sat beside him, beaming. Lyra leaned on the porch railing, reading data from a hollow tablet, but glancing up to smile at Aiden's gurgles. Sienna stood behind Ethan's chair, arms crossed, the posture of a guardian at rest. They breathed in the sweet air of Earth, the sun warming their diverse skins and reminding them that this was home, shared by many forms of life, all deserving of respect and acceptance. Ethan looked at his wives. Alien, yes, but also the most loving partners he could have imagined. In the swirling tapestry of cosmic possibilities, they had found each other. Through misunderstandings, prejudice, and danger, they had forged a bond as unbreakable as any. He smiled softly, pressing a kiss to Aiden's forehead, while Sienna ruffled the infant's hair playfully. Lyra caressed his tiny hand, and Mira hummed a lullaby filled with love. The journey had been fraught with trials and would no doubt contain more challenges ahead. Yet, standing shoulder to shoulder, They had proven that love, pure, unyielding, and fearless, could bridge the gap between worlds. Here, on the threshold of a new future, their family thrived, and Aiden's laughter echoed as an anthem of hope for all. And so, in that small corner of Earth, where prejudice had once threatened to tear them apart, a new age of unity dawned. Ethan, Lyra, Sienna, and Mira, along with their precious child, looked toward the horizon with hearts brimming with faith in the promise that tomorrow would bring. A promise that, no matter the obstacles, no matter the interstellar distances, love could indeed conquer all. They had been assigned 3 alien wives, with seemingly no escape, yet in the end, they found something far greater than any of them had dared dream: a family, a legacy, and a testament to the power of unity. And in that truth, the universe itself smiled, for the walls that once divided worlds had begun to crumble, replaced by bridges of compassion and guarded by the unbreakable shield of acceptance. Happy ending. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, Ethan and his wives shared a moment of quiet reflection, arms wrapped around each other in a gentle embrace. Aiden cooed happily, his tiny fingers grasping at the warm air. In the distance, neighbors waved in greeting, and the glow of acceptance lit the streets of Brookhaven. Their home, once disrupted by fear, now stood as a symbol of hope. With the love that bound them, nothing felt impossible. Together, they faced the future unafraid, forging a path of harmony, proving to a watchful galaxy that when hearts unite, even the vastness of space can become a place of belonging, guided by the simple, enduring truth that love conquers all.